Was he violent? Could he be violent?
Only if people were violent to him. I can be violent also, and I imagine so can you. You see, that's the whole story of America. They take their violence and turn it back around on somebody else. I don't have to talk about American violence. You can look all over the world and see American soldiers everywhere fighting in other people's countries and killing them. So if I were running the country in America, I wouldn't open my mouth about violence. As many people as they've murdered in Vietnam in the past 10 years, and they're going to talk about violence?
Shalom, I'd like to give all honor, glory, and praises to YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM Rakakodash. Like a double honors to our apostles and elders, great millstone. Salutations to our sincere Akim, pushing his word across the four corners of the world. And at the beginning of this video, you saw a so-called black woman by the name of Georgia Jackson. And she's the mother of George Jackson. And he was considered as an activist, a revolutionist, and he also co-founded the Marxist Leninist Black Guerrilla family. So in 1971, George Jackson was killed during an attempted prison escape in San Quentin. So 3 weeks after his murder, his mother, Miss Georgia Jackson, had an interview with this Edomite. And throughout the interview, the Edomite asked her, "Was your son George violent?" And she stated, "He was only violent when violence was brought to him." And she was saying how America, which is the biblical code for Babylon the Great according to the scriptures, cannot talk about any type of violence, how much violence that this so-called country has shed throughout the whole world, especially dealing with the so-called Negroes and the so-called Native Americans. And she's definitely right. And that's exactly what these Edomites, who are the so-called Caucasian race today, and more so beginning with these elites of them, they love to deflect from the truth, especially from the true history of America, how this so-called country was discovered, which was nothing but violence. And that's a part of America's shameful spewing on its glory. Because you go into the word violence, it goes into physical force used to inflict injury or damage. And no other country in today's time or just past history can really link up with the level of violence that America has brought to this whole world. And this is the book of Ecclesiasticus, the 10th chapter and the 4th verse. The power of the earth is in the hand of the Lord, YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, and in due time he will set over it one that is profitable. And the one that is profitable, the Heavenly Father Yahweh is going to give his only begotten son, Yahawashi, the keys of rulership to this earth and this universe. And his joint heirs, which are considered as the hopeful elect of the nation Israel, will be in reign with him. So right now, as you can see, how this whole earth is being defiled. Because as it says in Job 9:24, the earth is given to the hand of the wicked. You read in the book of Malachi, the 1st chapter, it tells you who is the wicked. Esau Edom, he's the border of wickedness. So right now, this earth is in improper management due to the inhabitants thereof, which is Esau Edom. So right now it's unprofitable. So when you read into the book of Genesis, the 27th chapter, it goes into the storyline of Jacob and Esau dealing with the inheritance, the blessing. So Jacob represents our forefather, the Israelites, and Esau represents the forefather of the Edomites, the so-called Caucasian race today. So within that storyline in the book of Genesis, the 27th chapter, our forefather Isaac blessed Esau with the fatness of the earth, the dew of heaven from above, and also he was given the sword. And as it says, and by the sword should thou live. And we're seeing the left-hand blessing of Esau Edom in today's time concerning biblical prophecies, how he's ruling with that sword. And this is the book of Revelation, the 6th chapter, and the 4th verse. And there went out another horse that was red, referencing to Esau Edom, and more so beginning with the elites of them, the so-called Illuminati, the international bankers, the ones that actually pull strings within the stronghold. And power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth. And you go into Animal Online for the definition of violence, it goes more into improper treatment. And that's exactly how the elites of Esau Edom is mismanaging this earth in an improper way, in a disorderly fashion. And that's why we're seeing today's time how peace is being taken away from the earth. That's why when the wicked is being ruled, the people are mourning. So that's why we're seeing all these protests, these riots, uproars of the people around the world, because the earth is given to the hand of the wicked, which represents Esau Edom. And they should kill one another, and there was given unto him a great sword. Going right back to the blessing that our forefather Isaac bestowed upon him. And that's why it stated in the book of Genesis, the 27th chapter, and by thy sword should thou live. Which goes into his violence, the way that he's inflicting injury or damage upon the earth and upon the inhabitants of the earth, along with the trees, the animals, the plants, the list goes on. So this so-called white man's blessing of the sword can come into many different fashions and forms. So we already know by default with his guns, his military, dealing with his tanks, his drones, his nuclear weaponry. But what about his other various ways how he utilized that sword? Let's take, for example, his economic warfare, hence the Cuba blockade, where the U.S. has put sanctions on that country, Cuba, and those people are crying and pleading out for America to lift those trade embargoes off of them, where it's starving them out economically. And it's becoming very challenging for the children of Cuba to have a so-called education. And they also have prohibited tourism, which is starving them out even more economically. And those people, for the majority part, are from the tribe of Manasseh. And what Esau Edom is doing, he's touching the apple of the Most High's eyes. And another fashion of the sword, his heart program, where they can cause earthquakes in various different places of the world, hence Haiti. And that's what Esau Edom does if you're not aligned with his NWO agenda, if you're not partaking to the image of the beast. His direct energy weapons, which is known as dew. And another fashion or form of his great sword is these disease outbreaks. And they show you that in these different apocalyptic type of movies or shows, how Esau Edom, they be in those laboratories creating these different diseases. And they're making it into a so-called epidemic or pandemic. So all those things are inhumane acts of Esau's track history on this earth. So this prophecy right here in the book of Revelation, the 6th chapter and 4th verse, can only fit one group of people. And that's referencing to the nation of Edom. So going back to the beginning of this video, Miss Georgia Jackson stated how the whole story of America, how they take their violence and they pretty much deflect from the truth and turn it back on somebody else. And that's exactly the energy of this so-called white man, who is that serpent. He's very crafty. He's cunning. He's sly. So everybody is waking up around the world unto that shameful spirit of America. And that's been shameful spirit upon its glory. And this is Numbers 35 verse 33. So you should not pollute the land wherein ye are. And another word for pollute, it goes into profane, contaminate, to adulterate, to poison, to defile. Which leads me to Isaiah 24 verse 5. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, meaning that he's averse to the true ways of righteousness, which goes into the ways of YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI's laws, statutes, and commandments. So the so-called white man put that to the side, and he comes up with his own mandates, laws, and unrighteous decrees. So they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant, hence the land Sabbath, where you're supposed to work and produce on the land for 6 years. Then on that 7th year, you're supposed to give it rest. But this so-called white man, he keeps plowing and plowing the land, and that's why this food supply is in a contaminated state, because he has transgressed the laws of YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI. So this earth is being defiled under the inhabitants thereof, his GMOs, his chemtrails, which goes right back into how he's causing violence on this earth, meaning improper treatment. So back in Numbers 35 verse 33, so you should not pollute or defile the land wherein ye are, for blood defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. So going back to the beginning of this video, Miss Georgia Jackson, she mentioned about the bloodshed of the so-called Negroes and the so-called Native Americans here in America, which are Israelites, by the way. And we can go to all the broken treaties with the so-called Native American tribes. From 1778 to 1871, the U.S. signed over 368 treaties with the so-called Native Americans. And you best believe that they broke all those covenants, going right back to that energy of that serpent, which can never be trusted. Never trust thy enemy. And just by secular history, we see all the bloodshed was shed upon the so-called Negroes, the Latinos, and Native Americans here in this land. So that's why the scriptures say, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. And we already know who shed it. That vessel of dishonor. Going right back to the man of sin, Esau, Edom. So this place, America, known as Babylon the Great, the city of confusion, is considered as a bloody city. Which leads me to the book of Ezekiel, the 24th chapter and the 6th verse. Wherefore thus said the Lord power, woe to the bloody city, meaning destruction to America, known as a bloody city. We just read in Numbers, the 35th chapter and the 33rd verse, how this place, America, is bloody. To the pot whose scum is therein. So another word for scum is being defiled, is filthy here. And that goes into morally, spiritually, and physically. And that's why America is considered as a valley, meaning that it's low in morals, integrity, any type of righteous standard. America has a mindset you can do and be anything that you want. Just obey your thirst. Do as thou wilt. So that type of wicked vibration has defiled the inhabitants thereof, except for the hopeful elect. So to the pot whose scum is therein, and whose scum is not going out of it, bring it out piece by piece, let no lot fall upon it. And this is the book of Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter and the 5th verse. Yea, also because he, referencing to Esau, Edom, transgressed by wine. So you go into the word transgress, it goes into to overstep, to be in violation of the law. What law? The law, statutes, and commandments of YAHAWAH BAHASHam YAHAWASHI, which is known as the true wine. But that this so-called white man tell you that the Bible is the law of the land. They love to proclaim that. That's why they swear on the Bible in their court systems. Or during their president inaugurations, they love to swear on the Bible, which is totally off. But he loves to put out this energy that America is a God-fearing country. Where you read into the book of Psalm, the 50th chapter and the 17th verse, seeing thou hatest instruction and casteth my words behind thee. So this so-called white man is the ultimate can't get right, and he's not totally aligned with YAHAWAH BAHASHam YAHAWASHI when it concerns righteousness. So it says, yea, also because he transgressed by wine, he is a proud man, neither keep it at home. So again, going back to the beginning of this video of Miss Georgia Jackson, she was making some strong points within that interview in the spirit. That was in 1971. And one of the points she made that's concerning this scripture right here, how when you see America's soldiers, they be all over the world fighting in other people's countries and killing them. And that's exactly what America does. They be over there for the name of democracy, which is nothing but that poisonous Babylonian wine. And they love to force their ways on these other countries to get them to bow down. If they don't bow down, and if they don't bow down, that's when Esau brings that violence to them. Just like with this devil juice. If these other countries not aligned with this devil juice, you see what Esau Edom does to them. He's murking these different presidents of these other nations that's not bound down to the image of Baal, the image of the beast. So that fits prophecy right here, how he is a proud man, neither keep it at home, who enlargeth his desire is hell, and is as death and cannot be satisfied. So this so-called white man has the blessing of the earth, dealing with the dew of heaven from above, the fatness of the earth, and he was given a great sword. So even within his blessing that was given to him by Isaac, our forefather, he's still not totally satisfied within the spirit. He wants to have more and more, so he cannot be satisfied. But gather it unto him all nations, and heap it unto him all people. And that goes into his NWO agenda. And we're seeing in today's time, he's trying his best to fulfill that wicked agenda. And YAHAWAH BAHASHam YAHAWASHI is going to allow him to get to a certain point of it, but he's not going to be 100% satisfied where he can sit back and chill and enjoy his pleasures of this so-called NWO agenda. Because that's when the Heavenly Father Yahweh is going to send his only begotten Son, YAHAWASHI, is going to upset all the elite's plans. And that's when he's going to usher in his righteous new world order. And I'm going to jump down to verse 8. So this is Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 8. Because thou, referencing again to America, being powered by the tabernacle of Esau Edom, has spoiled many nations, meaning that you have plundered, you have pillaged all these nations in the means of your so-called democracy, which goes into your contaminated Babylonian wine. And you have totally starved these other nations out morally, economically, and spiritually. That's why it states in Revelation the 18th chapter, by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. So you have totally spoiled all these nations. Again, going back into the Cuba blockade, where those people of Cuba are totally pleading and crying for the U.S. to remove those trade embargoes. So you are oppressing all these different countries, and all that's going to come right back on you, America. And it says, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee because of men's blood and for the violence of the land. Going back into the improper treatment that you have been doing on this earth, so-called white man, of the city and of all that dwell therein. And last but not least, this is Revelation, the 18th chapter, and the 21st verse. And the mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with violence should that great city Babylon be thrown down, and should be found no more at all. So YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI is going to bring total drama, hell, afflictions upon this place, America. And that's by the way of nuclear fire. And also when YAHAWAH comes back with the host of angels, he's going to come back with his own fire, going to the chariots of YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, those laser beams. And this place, America, known as Babylon the Great, is going to be considered as the lake of fire. So thus with violence should that great city Babylon be thrown down, and should be found no more at all. So this so-called country, America, really is a corporation, was so-called established by violence, and it's going to be taken out by violence. And that's total justice for the inhabitants of the world, and more so for the biblical Israelites. So that's the times that we in, with America being judged by YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI, because the sins of America has reached into heaven, and YAHAWAH BAHASHAM YAHAWASHI has remembered her iniquities. So our brothers out, you always edified with that. You always stay strong, keep pushing. Shalom.
There's many black people that get killed every day in this country and nobody knows or cares. And they'll tell me about violence, how they wiped out a whole nation of Indians, and they're going to say something to me about violence. I don't want to hear it.